it's so daunting that because our systems have been so very weak, we are solving these problems as we go along, albeit with very limited capacity, with very limited resources. And the portion of the response now is such that we want to target case finding, active case finding, contact tracing and all of that. So we are hoping that our partners will come in a very, very big way to be able to focus a lot of the investments that are coming into those areas, because that is the only way we can actually be able to conquer this virus, by actually breaking the transmission, and that is done through active case finding as well as through contact tracing.
And that case finding, because we look at that case we saw in Claratown, and you have children running in and out of the building. Every single person you look at is essentially, is basically a sort of ticking Ebola time bomb. You don't know whether they're positive, you don't know whether they're negative. Does that scare you?
Yes, it is very scary. In fact, that is the daunting nature of the work that we've got to do. I mean, but we are meeting the challenge head on. It is kind of very scary, because until you have contact tracers deployed sufficiently, widely across the entire country, you're going to have instances, whereby people who may have been exposed to other people who got ill with Ebola may be roaming around freely. That speaks to why we are having outbreaks, sporadic outbreaks everywhere across the country, because people are moving freely, people who should be in quarantine. Some people are under observations, and then they disappear while they're in observation, and nobody knows where they've gone to. Then they show up in parts of the country that were otherwise not, having any cases. So this is the challenge that we have. That's why we need a lot of investments in terms of logistics support, in terms of financial support for these foot soldiers that we want to have on the grounds. Unfortunately, a lot of the investments that's coming has been mainly targeting on creation of bed space and all of that, which understandably was the initial priority. Now that we've now have some empty beds, the thing now to do to finally conquer this virus is to focus a lot of investment on social mobilization and the like.
You spoke more strongly when we talked earlier about the role of the international community, and you seemed quite angry that people were not taking this seriously enough in your view.
Well, quite frankly, I'm happy now that the international community is responding, but then sometimes one gets the feeling that what sparked of that response was it because everyone then all of a sudden realized, particularly the bilateral response, that the outbreak of Ebola in this sub-region was actually a threat to their own nationals and their citizens, which to me appears to be self-serving. And the risk now is that we need to realize that for this thing to finish in this region, and also so that the world can be protected, we need to be able to focus a lot of the resources. We need to call on our partners, supporters, both multilateral and bilateral, to actually step up to the plate, because this is the time now. We are close to winning this battle, but then we are yet so far away because these investments are lacking. And we hope that people didn't just think about it, that because the numbers are going down, so their risk is gone down. No, it took one case to create the 4,000 infestation in Monrovia. Currently, we have close to 2,000 people in treatment, and maybe, 200 people in treatment, and maybe another 100 scattered around in the country that are not within the treatment system. So it means the potential is very much present that this thing could escalate. So we hope that people will not put down the need for support, that there's still quite a lot of need, and this will be unfortunate if people tend to think that this thing is getting over and so relax their support.
We mentioned one other figure earlier on, and that was the number of orphans that have been left by this crisis. You mentioned, I think, a number of about 12,000.
Well, and that was a crude estimate. If you consider the fact that about 4,000, 5,000 people have been infected, if you also think that most of these were adults, and so if you estimate that 80% of them, would have been parents, and if you consider the average household size in Liberia of 5 persons, meaning a mother, a father, and 3 kids, assuming that those 3 kids are minors, that will be work out to around 12,000. So it's really quite a huge number. Again, another daunting part of this problem. So even if Ebola were to end tomorrow, we will have that magnitude of children, whose future is really totally, hanging in limbo.
Are you a parent yourself?
Yes, I am a parent.
You must feel for these children.
Oh
who are
yes,
just
I
left
do.
with
I
nothing.
mean, it pains my heart every time I think about them, because imagine a child is 6 years old today and the person becomes, an orphan as a result of Ebola. And what is even more risky and sort of like really very heartburning is that if you think about how these emergency responses work, so now Liberia has a lot of attention, West Africa has a lot of attention, but then the support may die out in a year or two.